the golden age of Hollywood may be over, but these vintage, candid photos will make you nostalgic for that glorious time. Audrey Hepburn's later years may have been dedicated to charity work, but even before she gave up on the glamorous life, Hepburn proved just how much compassion she had for others. Most people aren't as inclined to take in an otherwise wild animal, even an herbivore like a deer, but Audrey couldn't resist this baby's doe eyes. She was frequently photographed with her baby deer throughout the years, but seeing such a put-together star sitting on the floor like this is truly inspiring. Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney built their careers as child film stars who made a perfect on-screen pair. However, even off-screen the two liked to let loose at Hollywood parties, even when they were quite possibly the youngest stars in attendance. Though they danced and sang their way across the silver screen, there's something intimately familiar about how they're moving to the music without a care in the world. When you're bound to choreography all the time, sometimes you just need to let loose. Both Frank Sinatra and Grace Kelly were used to spending more of their time in front of the cameras than behind them. However, as two showbiz veterans, they could both appreciate a good camera when they saw one. Sinatra looks pretty impressed by Kelly's long lens, while Kelly is happy to show off her new toy. She may not have become a professional photographer, but snapping pictures wasn't a bad way to pass the time as a princess. Ginger Rogers and Katharine Hepburn had fairly different tracks when it came to their Hollywood careers, however, that didn't keep them from working together from time to time. Rogers would later admit that there was some tension between the two on the set of the 1937 film, Stage Door. Rogers revealed that she was afraid of what Hepburn would do if she was truly angered by the star. Not wanting her career to be ruined, she mostly stayed away. Back before the Kardashians had their various romantic entanglements plastered all over the headlines, it was stars like Lana Turner who consistently turned heads through her choice of partners. In this instance, she was attending an elegant function on the arm of Tyrone Power. It was unclear whether their entanglement began before or after Power's divorce. However, Turner's shock here would mirror how she felt when he dumped her for his second wife, Linda Christian. This picture of Gerard Depardieu and a young John Travolta may have been taken in jest, but there's something about how Depardieu is bearing down on Travolta that makes it seem uncomfortable. Travolta may have had no problem with Depardieu in truth, rather, he just didn't fit in this little car. It couldn't have helped to have Depardieu trying to smush Travolta into the driver's seat. Much like Cinderella's stepsisters, if the car doesn't fit, it's better to just leave it alone. Bruce Springsteen built his career by turning the angst of his working-class youth into powerful rock and roll. Even after hitting the big time, he still found a moment to relax with a real working-class meal at McDonald's. At the time, Springsteen was in New Orleans on his Born to Run tour. The city itself may have been a far cry from the Jersey Shore, but some things, especially fast food, are the same no matter where you go. Clint Eastwood has always been the type to appear more at home in the Old West than in the modern era. There's something about seeing him relaxing on his couch strumming a guitar that strikes the eye. Of course, it's even weirder when you realize there's a series of pictures of golfing step by step behind his head. It's hard to say if that's Eastwood himself, but then again, this picture proves Eastwood has always been full of surprises. We may be used to celebrities flocking together, but even half a century ago, there was something exciting about seeing them all hang out. This motley crew made up of Errol Flynn, his wife Nora, Rita Hayworth, and her husband, Orson Welles, appeared to be having the time of their lives on a joint trip to Mexico back in the late 1940s. By 1946, World War II was over and Hollywood was booming. It seemed only right to get away. It might be hard to think of Humphrey Bogart as a family man given the kind of film roles he often found himself in, but he still knew how to leave his work behind him when need be. Acting may have often taken him to the farther reaches of the world, but he always made time for his daughter Leslie. After all, when Dad is away all the time, who wouldn't beg him to play on the swings? Carrie Fisher may have come from a showbiz family, but that didn't make her first big role any less exciting. Except, of course, when she had to deal with Mark Hamill acting like a silly kid when the cameras were off. Then again, Carrie had plenty of fun as a 19-year-old, aspiring actress, often playing right along with the rest of the crew's games. Given the wacky hairstyles she had to wear, it may have even been a relief for Mark to pull it all out. They may not have been in the same movie, but when Clark Gable is filming a swashbuckling role on the same island, you two would probably have wanted to step away for a visit. Joan Crawford was filming the movie I Live My Life while Clark Gable worked on Mutiny on the Bounty. Both productions found that Catalina Island was the perfect setting for the worlds they were trying to create. The two had previously performed together in several films. We may be used to celebrities flocking together, but even half a century ago, there was something exciting about seeing them all hang out. This motley crew made up of Errol Flynn, his wife Nora, Rita Hayworth, and her husband, Orson Welles, appeared to be having the time of their lives on a joint trip to Mexico back in the late 1940s. By 1946, World War II was over and Hollywood was booming. It seemed only right to get away. Alfred Hitchcock managed to create some of the best horror films of the mid-century, cleverly twisting a variety of narrative devices to create unexpectedly sordid outcomes. This may not have been one of his famed cameos, but considering his prolific body of work as a director, it's nice to be able to see him at work. If the horde of birds decorating the set didn't give it away, the still was taken on the set of his film, The Birds. It can be hard to believe that the sultry A-lister was once a round-faced child, but even as someone who was raised in Hollywood, it's nice to see that Angelina Jolie managed to have these mundane moments. Jolie may have eclipsed the fame both of her parents had in their own careers, but it's clear from this tender moment that however they may have felt about each other, it had no bearing on how they cared for the young Angie. When Diana Ross was at the height of her fame, she took the time to help out an up-and-coming group of family musicians, the Jackson 5. In fact, she was so impressed by their talent, especially a miniature Michael, that she staked her own name on their single. Their first album was actually titled Diana Ross Presents the Jackson 5. Given how successful they would become, we're sure Diana had no regrets about putting her faith in the group. Rarely seen out of his furry costume, actor Peter Mayhew took a moment to give the tiny Carrie Fisher a lift while they had a break from working on Star Wars. At the time, no one in the film had any inkling what a big hit the film would become. Many of the actors were still at the beginning of their careers, which would quickly take off after the film's release. In the meantime, they got to goof off between takes. Steve Buscemi may have one of those faces you remember with a name you forget, but before he was popping up in cameo roles in Adam Sandler films, he was a New York City firefighter. Even more impressive, however, is that long after he was a working actor, Buscemi showed up to his old firehouse in downtown Manhattan after 9/11. He pulled 12-hour shifts with the rest of the guys as they worked to recover as many victims as possible. Elizabeth Taylor and Judy Garland came from two very different showbiz backgrounds, but as contemporaries in Hollywood, it should come as no surprise that they were friends at some point. While Judy looks a little less than enthused by Liz's greeting, or at the very least like she doesn't feel like getting up, Taylor, on the other hand, is completely oblivious to Garland's reaction, kissing her brow to complete her good luck wish before Judy's next show. Both Frank Sinatra and Grace Kelly were used to spending more of their time in front of the cameras than behind them. However, as two showbiz veterans, they could both appreciate a good camera when they saw one. Sinatra looks pretty impressed by Kelly's long lens, while Kelly is happy to show off her new toy. She may not have become a professional photographer, but snapping pictures wasn't a bad way to pass the time as a princess. Helen Keller may not have gotten to enjoy Charlie Chaplin's physical comedy by watching it, but when the two had the opportunity to meet in 1918, Chaplin was happy to help Keller any way he could. In the Hollywood backlot, Keller was captured as she felt Chaplin's lips in order to understand his speech. He also would later let her feel his face and clothes so she had some sense of his physical persona while his films were being explained to her. Elvis was already a fairly big rock star when he was drafted into the army in order to join the fight in the Korean War. Though many celebs spent time on USO tours in order to boost morale, Elvis was intent on being one of the guys. Though he wanted no special treatment during his service, he was also happy to pull out his guitar in order to bring a little light and fun to their barracks. Filming a movie can be a difficult process. Even when you are needed on set for specific scenes, you can easily find that there's an abundance of downtime in between takes. When Catherine Deneuve and David Bowie found a few moments of rest on the set of The Hunger, they still didn't want to sit idly. With no smartphones for distractions, they turned to the admirable pastime of competing against one another in a game of chess. When you're as young as Jodie Foster was when she made Taxi Driver, there's still something exciting about doing a seemingly endless string of press conferences. Joined by director Martin Scorsese and star Robert De Niro, Jodie's exuberance is hard to miss. The three of them appear to genuinely be enjoying each other's company, no matter how many times they've had to answer the same questions. Hopefully whatever Jodie and Martin are laughing at was an age-appropriate joke. As Marilyn Monroe was building her career in Hollywood, much of her work consisted of convincing executives to hire her based on her good looks and fun-loving personality. Far from the dim-witted blonde she played in many of her films, Marilyn certainly knew how to play the game, even if she still sometimes underestimated her own worth. Back in the early days though, Marilyn was able to let loose on her own, especially when she took a break from the grind of Hollywood. It's hard work being as glamorous as Sophia Loren, though she, of course, makes it look easy. Perched on the edge of a railcar, Sophia Loren brought her signature style to Disneyland all the way back in 1963. Even she can't help but crack a smile while enjoying some private rides in the happiest place on earth. Even so, we're not sure if anyone has ever managed to look as cool she did while on a Disney ride.